And even though I had the type advantage, he beat me. Before whiting out, his sprite switched out with the Cinquels. He looked almost disappointed. After exiting the Cherry Grove Pokemon Center, I hadn't used it prior, but it was apparently the only option that I had. I had walked back to the place he had challenged me, only to find that I was unable to battle him again at this point. The game was starting to get a little annoying by now. I had no money, no Pokegear, or Pokedex. I was also unable to battle wild Pokemon. Fortunately, once I entered Route 30 onward, there were other Pokemon trainers in which I could battle and easily beat, though none of them seemed eager to speak to me after I'd won. By the time I entered Violet City, my Pokemon's level was still far too low to take on the gym leader. However, with the money that I had won from the trainers I fought before, I was at least able to buy a few potions. I felt like I was set. The lesser trainers of the gym were easy enough. I was only forced to use 2 or 3 of my previously purchased potions, and I leveled up once again. But as I took on the gym leader, he proved to be too much for me, and I lost yet again. Upon winning, he did the very same thing Gold had done. He looked disappointed as well. When the battle ended, I didn't white out. Rather, I had to endure a lecture about treating Pokemon correctly from the leader. Once he had finished speaking, I received a one-worded question. Steal? I chose the only option given to me. Yes. Silver backed up one step and slammed into the gym leader, kicking him backwards. Another dialogue box popped up telling me that I had stolen the gym badge, TM31, and 500 Pokédollars. After that, I whited out. This is how it continued on for the remainder of the game. While I was able to defeat lesser trainers on the paths to the cities and in the gyms, I constantly would lose to the leader and was forced to steal their badges. The steal option also worked on people who would normally give you items in the game. This is how I was able to obtain key items like the item finder, the bicycle, the water pail, and HMs. They refused to give me anything otherwise. Anyone I spoke to either refused to talk to me, greeting me only with silence, or lectured me a little on how to properly treat Pokemon. It was also beginning to get that way with Nurse Joy. But by the time I had progressed to Goldenrod City, she would scold me any time I whited it out. Pokemon continued to avoid me as well. If I wanted to better my team, I had to hope that the Pokeballs I used worked the very first time. What was stranger about random battles is that even if I locked the Pokemon in battle with the mean look, the Pokemon passed out. Like, literally. After my first attack of mean look, the Pokemon would faint on its own before I could choose another attack. The dialogue box proclaimed, Pokemon forced itself to pass out. And then the battle ended. The only thing that seemed to go normally for me was the battles with Team Rocket. I always won against them, and they always treated me like a punk kid getting in the way. But the rest of the game, up until a certain point, isn't entirely important. Aside from the win, lose, and steal, everything was more or less normal. While my Pokemon matured slowly due to frequent losses, they did seem to grow to like me a little as I began giving them haircuts and other little things to boost our bond. The last time I checked, the person who rated their happiness said, "It's quite cute." I know you must be thinking that this isn't disturbing at all, or that I should just, in fact, accept the fact that this is simply a hack for me to tell Silver's side of the story. Well, I did. And it was. However, I'm not quite finished yet. Once I had finally made it to Kanto, I ventured into Viridian City. But the second I stepped foot into the city, the music just cut off. I thought for certain that this was a glitch in the programming, that now I was to walk through a soundless game. As I stood there for a second, though, a very, very faint noise picked up and faded away. I was now sure that the music was just messed up, like it was trying to play but couldn't. I stepped back onto the road, that I just came from, and the music picked up perfectly. It was only Viridian City that was dead silent. I was curious now, so I stepped back into the silent town and began to explore. There wasn't a damn person in sight. No one was out in the open and no one was in the houses. There wasn't even anyone in the Pokemon or the Pokemon Center. The city was entirely empty. All there was the silence and the occasional soft noise, which I still hadn't identified. As I walked toward the gym, the sound grew a little louder. I figured the noise was coming from inside, so I entered. But there was no one there. There was nothing to be expected. The gym was always empty until much later. The noise didn't play in here, but it was still dead silent. I walked up to where the gym leader normally stood and walked past the spot into the wall. I was immediately transported into another room. The wall had a hidden set of stairs. The place was silent as well, but the noise began to play yet again. It was much louder this time. A bunch of random, high-pitched noises. But it sounded like screams. By this time, as you could well imagine, my heart was pounding out of my chest. I don't take screaming or anything that sounds like screaming very well, due to a very unfortunate, fucked-up experience with a very graphic haunted house when I was 3. But I digress. Regardless of my pounding heart, my shaking hands, I explored the room. It was tinted in a muted red, much like everything was in Pokemon Red. The room followed a sideways zigzag pattern, and the screams came at random. Some were short, but some were long and drawn out. It sounded as if someone was being tortured or killed. As I continued down the zigzag hallway, I came across several disturbing, fucked up images. Sprites of NPCs without their heads, as well as heads without their bodies. Anytime I tried to examine either of these, Silver would just simply say, don't look. The bodies and heads became more and more frequent as I went on, clogging up the hallways and leaving only a small path for me to follow. The screaming was becoming more frequent as well. The screen began to flicker as I walked, just like it would if one of my Pokemon was poisoned. I was fairly certain none of them were, however. Just in case, I opened my party menu to check. None of my Pokemon were afflicted with poison, but their health had started to lower. In an attempt to fix this, I picked a super potion out of my bag and tried to use it on my Fergalter. A dialogue popped up and said, "It won't have any effect." Now I was disturbed. I knew none of this was supposed to happen. Regardless, I continued on, hoping that they all fainted from this. I'd be taken back to a Pokemon Center and things would return to normal. It was naive of me to assume that. I continued along this morbid, fucked-up path, the screen flickering in and out. I began to notice that Silver himself was beginning to move a little slower as well. I don't know what, but something was draining my Pokemon's energy as well as my own. Finally, Silver stopped as the dialogue box popped up telling me that my Pokemon had fainted. But it didn't say what I had hoped. It said,